Hello humans, hello humans. It's like 10 after 8. It's on the 26th of January. Making another run into inland for the dog to take him in to get seen again. He's actually doing better, but he hasn't eaten in 8 days. This is the 8th day that we've had this like crises. So I've got to get him in, and they've got to adjust the meds that he's on. Although he's doing better, I just need to have that corrected so that he gets back onto some food. He's eaten very little in these last 8 days, understandably. Anyway, so I'm going to chat for a while. I don't know if this will end up getting uploaded or not. It's going to depend on a number of factors, including the device here, my storage device on the little recorder. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Really should go watch JC at Beyond Mystic on Rumble and watch the show they did yesterday, Beyond the Woo, about the deep fakes, okay, and how much of our social order is actually built around deep fakes. You know, so the Twin Towers came down. George Bush and the Elohim worship cult created the 9/11 thing. The towers were not struck by airplanes. If you see the show from JC, he had Jay Widener and Kerry Cassidy on there, and Jay Widener can prove to you pretty conclusively that there was never any airplane, right? There was just never any airplane debris anywhere. There was also never any airplane debris in the Department of Defense. And I happen to know a guy. So I worked with this guy. He was in his 40s when that happened. No, he was in his 30s in 2001, right? And I was working with him. I was doing a stint at state government. I'd been asked to do a special task, basically be a change agent and cause a disruption in a dysfunctional IT department for one of the state agencies, right? And because of my presence and because of my knowledge and because of the fact that I just don't tolerate bullshit, when people would pop off with technical crap, you know, it just could not happen, was absolutely bogus, I would, call them on it, right? Whereas a lot of other people may have been because of, you know, their long-term employees, they want to get along, all of that kind of stuff. And I am distinctly not a normie, so it didn't bother me to say, hey, dude, you're out of your mind. You know, that particular device you want to purchase will not do video compression. And so it's not going to aid our department in doing conferences between buildings, right? It's a nice device. It was a cool router and that kind of thing. But if you go and read the technical description of the compression, it wouldn't work on video, and it wouldn't even try. So anyway, I was doing all of that, and this guy that was the head of that department, his brother, I think he was still in the Navy. Okay, so his brother was in the Navy at that point, or had previously, very close to that period, gotten out of the Navy, and he was being a consultant or something. But for whatever reason, on that day, at that time, he was at the Pentagon and was walking into the building not directly opposite from where the attack took place, but just off on the side, like two of the sides of the Pentagon removed, right? And so his brother, out of the corner of his eye, saw a fucking missile. He saw, and this guy's a Navy ordnance fellow, and he knew what he was looking at. And so it was no airplane. There was no airplane that hit the Pentagon. It was a missile. There was also an explosion inside the Pentagon that occurred milliseconds before the missile hit. So the office of the auditor, which was destroyed because they were, this was the destruction of all of the dirt on the Bush family and all of that, right? That's why they brought down building number 7 and burned all of the contents of it. It wasn't struck by any airplanes. It just magically fell to pieces. And they don't really have an explanation, and they just sort of defy you to call them on it and say, hey, dude, this is bogus. But in any event, so this guy was walking into the Pentagon and saw the missile out of the corner of his eye. He was actually in the parking lot, and he's walking over towards this particular door there. He had a meeting with some people. So it wasn't like he was going into work, but he was on his job going into a meeting at that time. And the explosion happened, right? But he saw the missile, and he was convinced that we were under attack by the Russians or somebody, right? That missiles would be raining down everywhere. And then, of course, we find out it's our own politicians, and it's a put-up job. Yeah, good boy. So anyway, so fascinating show. It lays out for you a lot of what the woo people have been dealing with all of these years, right? No one would believe us when we would say these things, and they weren't in a mindset to receive that information. So there's no point talking to them about it. If they're not ready to hear, you're just wasting your time. Early in the morning, I need coffee. Going to be a long day. I expect we'll be there for a number of hours. I've got to get some radiology on him to make sure that we don't actually have any kind of bleed. Pretty sure he doesn't. We've recovered his mucus. Thank you very much, Ken Swartz and Chris and Jess and everybody at C60 Purple Power. I've been giving it to him. He's got energy because of that, and he is indeed repairing his gut. And we've gone through the issue of rebuilding the mucus lining. So I'm very pleased about Boris's progress. This is a little diversion here. It's just that he's not yet eating, and I need to get, and the medicine they gave us to stimulate appetite is simply not effective on him. And so that's why we're heading in. And it needs to be done. Anyway, so, all right, so Jay has the show. He shows you a lot, not anywhere near all, right? I mean, but a lot of the deep fakes that have been causing us to, like all of us as a populace, to react, right? So that's what they want. They want to react. They don't want a response. So my response on 9/11, when I was out walking the dogs here, different dogs, but I was out walking dogs along my street in the afternoon, and ran into one of our neighbors who was out for her jog, and this is on the day of 9/11, and she's all trashed and, oh, we're under attack and so on. And it's like, what do you say to her? You got to say, no, I don't believe any of it, that there were no Arabs, this is impossible, the planes can't do that, and yada, yada, yada. And because she's not going to be accepting of it. And so it was just no point. It's just that, I basically indicated, because that's the kind of guy I am, that I didn't believe any of it, but I didn't go into any of the details. And so, obviously she thinks I'm a little crazy because the rest of the population believed it all and it was on TV and stuff, right? Anyway, so Jay and JC, and JC stands for Jean-Claude Trottier, Beyond Mystic. And Carrie Cassidy went into a lot of these deep fake things, right? Carrie Cassidy she's a little bit intense, okay? So I dispute anything she's got to say about AI, because she actually said that AI does not require a computer. And it's like, okay. She says it can attach to stuff and can attach to people even. And so, so this to me is that she's got AI confused with demons or something, some kind of non-corporeal but yet self-directed life form. Okay, so anyway, so I dispute all of that, and of course I think that this prisoner life in prison is just playing her. He's just gaming her. He's just telling her so much bullshit. He's the one that's been feeding her all this shit about AI being able to float around in the air and attach to people, and how there's a single alien AI running our planet. And it's like, okay, woman, she obviously has never used it. She never programmed. She doesn't understand that these machines are not conscious. It's just other people like myself that have written really good programs that mimic effective language. Thus, you think you're talking to something sentient, right? And so it's not really. I mean, there's just, you turn off the machine and there's no consciousness there. There's no awareness. And it would have to get to the same stage in the program in order to even come close to like picking up the conversation or whatever, right? So anyway, so she's very deluded about AI and is deluded about this idea that whistleblowers have authority. Now, she gives them authority, okay? So she agrees with Captain Mark Richards. He's not a captain. He's a convicted prisoner. And also, he was a science fiction writer. And so, Carrie is non-discriminatory, right? She doesn't use discrimination at all. She doesn't use what they call discernment. Hang on, there we go. Anyway, sorry. So she doesn't use discernment on this, and just accepts what this bullshit that this guy's fed her. Same thing is true of William Tompkins, and Carrie and Jay get into kind of a little, raised voice tussle there as Jay objects to her intruding on the show with what basically is, horseshit illusion. And an old man who was in his 80s or 90s who was taken advantage of, fed a bunch of misinformation, and regurgitated it back out on command, thinking he was doing good and was going to make some money. And Jay Weidner investigates, right? Jay's not stupid. Jay's a very, very, very talented, serious fucking person. And so if you took Jay to Russia and you introduced him around, everybody's going to say, yeah, that's a serious man. He's not a Corey Good, right? This is a serious individual. Anyway, though, so I trust Jay's analysis and the fact that he always comes back to, solid reality and says, no, there was no airplane. And look, here's how you know that. So anyway, also, by the way, people were videotaping the towers, and you can go out and search for these videotapes and find them, and you see the towers just exploding. So people in New York on that day were videotaping this whole thing as first tower blows up, starts problems. A lot of people were actually recording one on videotape, right? So not digital, but on video, which is a difference. In a second, I'll tell you. But and they recorded the second building exploding, right? No fucking airplane. But at the same instant, the guy is recording this. He's standing, this one video, he's standing near a store that has a lot of TVs in the windows. This is off somewhere else in New York, but he's able to have a view of the Twin Towers. So I don't know New York, I don't know where he was or any of that, but there's this electronics store near him, and you see TVs in the background showing the planes, or a plane hitting the second building there, as he is recording that no, that did not happen. As he's recording that, nothing was going on. It was just simply exploding on its own. But anyway, go watch this and you'll see about that. You'll see how many of the events of our lives are bogus, and they're counting on the fact that you're a normie. You're not awake to this. You're not going to stitch all these things together in your mind, so you're not going to catch on. You're simply going to react. And that's what they want, is they want that reaction, because that reaction was sufficient for them to engineer us attacking Afghanistan. Afghanistan never attacked us. Iraq never attacked us. Libya never attacked us. All this shit. And we have to acknowledge that in the 100 plus years that we've had, 110 years that we've had a central bank in the United States, that central bank has had to cause the United States to start 251 wars in order to prop up the dollar through its various problems, because it's a piece of shit, because it's a bogus scheme. So anyway, the bogus scheme is coming to an end now. That's why all this stuff is coming out. And we're being immersed in the degradation of the official narrative. And this is the point of hypernovelty. This is the point we're tipping over into hypernovelty, because we're not going to go back. We're not going to go back to the point where more people believe 9/11. And so if you go read Russian history books, since 1968 have been stolen by various means. Anyway, though, so other countries see clearly what's going on here. And they're just, in our country, they're just counting on you not being able to read Russian and not being curious and so on. And that's just the way of the world for them, is they keep you fat, dumb, and ignorant. They don't really care if you're happy or not, just so long as you're not so angry you're going to take action against them. Got about an hour and 20 minutes to make it there, so I'll just barely be able to do it. It's a long drive for me to get into anywhere here, especially where we've got to have some level of sophisticated medical equipment. Anyway, so I may end up having to, put these on pause based on how much traffic and stuff I encounter. Just a heads up. Anyway, though, all right, so the Narradim is crumbling. It's going to expose all of this shit anyway. This is a natural event of the changing of the energies here and the changing of humanity. And this is what I think has really got these guys really freaked out, is the veracity and the ferocity of the response to their scams. So many people are waking up. It's like, and we're just not taking this bullshit anymore, right? No more bullshit. That's the way it is. You tell me something that's horseshit, I'm going to, just in a casual conversation, I would say, no, that ain't right. You're deluded. This is, nothing against you, but, you've been sold a bill of goods by these fucktards. Let's see. Yeah, hang on, Boris. We'll do it. Anyway, so Jay he's going to be producing a lot of information about all this stuff, all the deep fakes and so on, and showing how they're done. Now we'll get into that. We'll tear it apart. We'll be tearing apart history. We're going to go all the way back. We'll expose Tartaria and how all of this stuff has been manipulated by the Elohim worship cult all of these years. And that's really what it is that the worship cult is doing that. It's trying to organize all of this stuff. Now, I believe that, okay, so let me stop and talk about AI for a minute, okay? So in the 1940s, when these spaceships started being crashed, they weren't crashing. So we had we've had 2 or 3 major radar experiments going on in the late 30s and in the 40s. And sometime along that period of time, they discovered that they could bring these things down with these intense radar beams that disrupt the technology that these UFOs used. Now, I'm assuming it's better now, the technology, I mean. But when they did that, they brought down these UFOs. We get the retrieval stuff going here. Are you doing okay, Doggo? Yep, okay. We get these crash retrievals, and what do they find? They find a lot of stuff they don't understand. But they do understand some of it after they dig around into it for a few years. And so we get crashes in 42, 45, and 47 that yield significant chunks of technology to mess with. And so we discover, and then start introducing into our social order in the 50s, we discover digital electronics and basically transformative silicon chips. Okay, so they're semiconductors, they are transducers, they can do a lot of different things. Now, they were able to, so our scientists were able to tease that shit out of these wrecks, and they were able to do it so that they understood it, and they could go find people and use those people to introduce the technology into our social order. So this is how they created the tech industry, and this is how they directed the tech industry. So they made people millionaires. They chose them, and that was the whole point, was to get our society starting to get level, so to speak, with the space aliens or whoever the fuck they are, wherever they come from. I don't buy interdimensionals. And for a bunch of reasons, I can do energy calcs that would tend to dispute the idea, okay? And they also dispute the idea that living flesh can go through an energetic portal like a black hole. I understand that the current quantum mechanics guys are saying that this is quite possible. However, they're basing everything that they know on Einstein, and Einstein's 100% wrong and was bogus, and he was putting out a designed shill story to keep us in a particular level of advancement with this technology, and it worked. And so for ever since Einstein came on in and started spewing out all of his general relativity crap, we've abandoned the ether, and we've had no major progress. We've had no major breakthroughs, only incremental changes up until the point that they introduced silicon chips. And then after that, only incremental changes in the silicon chips. So we should have been able to go way the fuck beyond that in 100 years. And it just is not happening. All right. So when these ships crashed, the rumors were in the late 50s, which I encountered in the late 60s, the rumors were that there was stuff they didn't understand in a serious way, and so they just sort of shelved it, right? Figuring that, well, we'll understand it in a few years. Let's just put it away and go and look at this other stuff in the meantime, which they did. So the rumor was that they were putting these aspects of this technology aside for later examination. Two of the things that they put aside for later were the concept of centralized computer control, self-directed, within the device. Okay, so the quote AI, the artificial intelligence that allowed the UFO to fly. Another thing that they put aside was this idea was the idea that part of the ship is alive. Okay, that this amalgamated aluminum, magnesium, all of these various different metals all smushed together in this particular arrangement at a subatomic level. The skin, on the outside of the skin, had stuff that was basically alive, that you could scrape it off and it would have been identified by a biologist as being biological material, even though it was integrated with a mechanical device. And that even after that, the mechanical device was in some way integrated to what we can think of as electronic control. But it's not electronics as we understand it, and it's not AI as we understand it, right? So our AI, as I have shown in my video on BitChute, is basically a collapse of potential around the number of links between significant nodes in a large language model. Now, here's something for Carrie Cassidy, right? So both Jay Widener and I have programmed computers. I've done it very extensively. I was paid to program computers for a lot of years. I programmed for Microsoft, for Sun Computing, for telcos, for the government, for the military. I did some on my own, and I have patents. Okay, I contributed significant stuff to major patents in the telephony industry. I contributed stuff to major patents for corporations and for the military in encryption, very sophisticated algorithms, and I also have patents for my own software. Most of the software is now been rendered useless by the new kind of a monitor, because I was doing software that would affect your brain, and these new monitors are so powerful and have such a giant amount of blue light that I've shelved all of those patents, taken them off. I mean, the patents are still there, but I've taken all that software off, and I don't sell it or support it anymore because of the potential that it can cause brain damage, or at least brain shorts, so to speak. I mean, short your brain out for a while. That kind of thing, right? Because I was looking for the powerful edge of computing. So, to Kerry Cassidy, it's like, well, David Adair is not a particularly brilliant fellow, and no, he has no ability to discriminate as to whether or not an AI is, quote, alive or sentient, right? Because AI is designed to fool our consciousnesses. Anyway, so now getting back to the spaceship. So they crashed this. It caused this ship to crash. It gets shelved in Area 51, S4, who the fuck knows. But they're not investigating it now because, or they weren't investigating it in the 40s and 50s because they didn't have enough of an understanding. It didn't have enough of a technical base or minds that had been familiar with the technology to be able to make any kind of meaningful conclusions from any sort of an investigation. In fact, at the time, they were having a difficult time just creating the kind of experiments and coming up with a paradigm that would allow them to investigate this stuff in a meaningful fashion. So it's only now that we're applying terms like AI to these spaceship control systems. Okay, so I said in 2017 that I believe they had AI, and I believe they didn't understand it, and I believe that they isolated it, and I don't know if they've taken it out of wrappers since then, okay? So I don't have any current information on it, but the information that I had that dried up, and I do all the linguistics, so I really hunt deeply and see if there's any threads and so on, and cross-compare, analyze all the language. So I'm pretty convinced that we haven't had any new developments relative to this, to either the alien form of AI or the biological material integrated with both the amalgam and the silicon chips. Now, here's what you have to understand. The AI that they were dealing with in that ship is connected to the biological material on the outside of it, and perhaps on the inside of it as well. I don't know. They haven't let me examine any of them. And no, by the way, I just, again, for Kerry's reference, I do not believe that Adair touches a UFO and it responds to him and he's able to control it. So, anyway, yes, it is mind-to-machine interface, okay? There's no doubt about that. Yes, you need the AI for that mind-to-machine interface, but there's a whole lot of slips between the lip and the cup on that particular concept. So, anyway, our AI that the AI that they're dealing with is not like our AI. The AI they're dealing with is analog AI, and that's why they had such a difficult time in assessing all of this. We were an analog society, and when we did so, we discovered using our analog tools, our electrical meters, etc., all analog powered, we discovered digital technology because it was instantly apparent that this was their main control system, or what we thought of as the main control system for these ships, was not analog. And so this was a big shock to us. We developed the silicon chips and so on. And then I get born about that time in the 50s, and now myself and a whole generation, we've had a lot of interaction with digital. We know digital really fucking well. I'll dream code. I mean, I hate to say it. Those times that I dream, sometimes I'll just dream code and like beautiful little design patterns and shit. But in any event, so it's the combination. It is the translation from analog into digital that was sort of defeating their particular approach to this. Now, maybe, of course, in all these years, they've got better people down there, et cetera, and we've gone beyond these issues. I think that to be the case. Okay, so I think it's not a belief system. It's just that I have enough evidence and rumors and stuff to think that there is a significant probability that it is true that that corporations, independent corporations, do have control over working models or working alien reproduction vehicles, ARVs, and that they're out doing shit with them. And I don't blame them. Okay, so if I were a corporation and I got this, they had to, by the way, the government, in order to have the ability to have, in order to have deniability, to be able to say, no, we don't know shit about any of this crap you're talking about. In order to have that, they had to hand over all of the technology to private parties, which they did to these corporations. Now, they don't know me. I'm just as hypothetical back in the day. And I'm in a corporation and they hand me that technology, and I investigate it for, 20 years. In that process of becoming very familiar with it and so on, the fucking idea is going to dawn on me. Why should I give this to these asshole government guys that are always threatening me and making my life difficult? Why don't I just keep it to myself and feed them some bullshit, put them off on some trails that we know are dead ends, and not worry about the fucking government? Because pretty soon, once I've got a couple of these alien reproduction vehicles flying around, I'm effectively my own fucking country in terms of military power. And so I'm quite certain that some of these companies have done that. I would suspect that we're looking at Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and a couple of the other aerospace companies as being the most likely. And I think that we've got real, quote, solid, unquote, rumors that support the idea that for sure Lockheed Martin and Raytheon are involved. And of course, Jet Propulsion Laboratory and all these kind of fuckers as well. But in terms of the corporations actually having alien reproduction vehicles and running around doing shit with them and getting seen and all of that kind of thing as UFOs and interacting with our military and stuff, I think it's most likely Lockheed Martin, with Raytheon for what we would think of as advanced tech support. So anyway, our corporation at this stage can do anything the fuck it wants. It wants to go to the moon, zoom, there it goes, right? Because we understand some of this. How much of the AI they understand, I have no way of knowing. But here's the thing. We do not have up until about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years now, let's see, 23. Yeah, so up until 2020, there was no sign of even an investigation into analog computing. And there was always people doing it. It's fun. I enjoy it. It's a lot, in my opinion, it's a lot better than, much more fun than digital computing. But the failure with analog computing is that there's not an effective way to transfer software into analog. And so now we've got a bunch of companies in this last 3 years that are coming out with this ability to write code that can then be compiled and pressed down on and control analog devices in a way that it's an effective computing structure. So as a programmer, basically you're always testing for conditions. Is this is this pin hot? Is that pin not hot? Right? So if this particular pin on an 8-pin chip is hot, you got electricity coming in at this level, then do this, right? If it's not hot, don't do that. And so it's a sort of a binary thing, dealing with it. Now and by hot, we have a definitive threshold that it must meet in order for that to qualify. So it's got to be at, plus or minus, I think usually about 1/10 of a volt there. But in any event, so basically you're just watching voltage, and once it goes over a threshold, then you decide that, okay, that condition has now been met and that this pin is hot. In analog computing, it's not that way. In analog computing, you have a situation of the pin is hot and receiving electricity, and that electricity could vary quite wildly and widely, and your device is aware of that variance continuously. So there is not this idea of a threshold. There is not a cross the threshold in order to turn this digit from 1 to 0. It's at 0 in analog, and it's slowly creeping up into a condition where it will be 1. And in analog computing, you know the amount of the creep, the incremental amount of the creep, the speed of the creep of electricity into the device, etc., etc. So you know all of these things at a very much nuanced level. Digital cuts you off from any electricity nuance. Good boy. He's just lying back there, just quite content. I think he's actually feeling better, even though he hasn't really eaten for 8 days. And he knows we're going to see his buddies at the vet. So he knows we're doing things for him, so he's somewhat content with all of this. Much more so than us. Just been hellacious these last... Well, he was sick for like 2+ weeks before we had this big crash. So we've been going at this for like 3 weeks now. Over 3 weeks. But since he hasn't eaten in 8 days, that 8 days is critical at one level. Anyway, so analog computing is all about electrical nuance, right? It's really cool stuff from a programming viewpoint, especially if you can write code that will interact with it. And I won't go into why that's such a huge issue. Oh my God. Giant load of lumber stuck blocking the road. Okay, good. He's going to make it. It's a semi with a little extension off the back. That is a big load of lumber. They've had people out there directing traffic around these trucks as they try and get on the freeway. Shit. They got 5 axles in the back. Almost a lowboy. Lumber for Sierra Pacific. Looks like dimensionals. 2x4s, 2x6s, something like that. It's all wrapped up, so, or it could be plywood. Anyway, so analog computing is all about nuance. You get to see the various shades of the electricity creeping around, and you can make all kinds of decisions. So instead of being able to make decisions off of reaching a threshold and then have various different kinds of branches, you can set those branches in your code relative to fine nuance within the electrical operation of the device that's reporting to you. So in my opinion, analog computing is just really fucking cool. I like it a lot. Especially since I like programming little handheld devices and things, right? Now that I'm not doing big stuff for people. Anyway, though, so 3 years ago, 2020, we started seeing language saying, hey guys, we're investigating analog computing here again, and isn't it cool? And so I thought, this is odd. We haven't touched analog computing since the 50s when we swapped over into the digital computing in the 60s. So basically, what the fuck is going on, right? And just the mere fact that we started having language around analog computing got my interest piqued. Not only on a personal level, can I get one of these critters and program it, have fun playing with it, but also the idea that, okay, maybe we're moving into a hybrid world now. Maybe they've the powers that be, the Elohim worship cult, the deep state, whoever the fuck we want to think about having control of this, is now starting to introduce this level of computing into our society where it had not in the past, and that would be great. I'd love that. But anyway, so that could be a trigger, could be telling us that they have at least overcome that particular issue relative to these UFOs at an officialdom level, to the point that they're putting it out into the social order. Or it could be that the same condition is existent, that we have overcome this barrier, and it's being done at a corporate level, independent of the government. So at this point, we just can't say anymore. Go and watch JC and Jay Widener and Kerry, and look at how much of the world is a deep fake. And you'll see what I'm talking about and the potential issues as to why that is meaningful. So we're at that point of hypernovelty, and I expect in hypernovelty to have major new invention just naturally, as we throw off all of the constraints that you would find in places from places like the Einsteinian general relativity cul-de-sac, that sort of thing. Gotta get a wiggle on here if I'm gonna get us in there on time. I'll just barely make it. Anyway. So, we may see breakthroughs in AI, but here's the deal. I think they have had AI since the 50s, but that AI is not loose. That AI is not a general AI. That was a specific device-based AI that they're not able to, that they wouldn't want to even remove from the ship and try and make it do stuff anywhere else, right? So AI does not exist. It's simply computer code. So if they crack the problems with the analog-based AI in these UFOs, they're not going to try and, quote, lift it out of the UFO in any way. They're just going to write some code on another computer and create, something close to what they found. So AI is not discrete. It doesn't have any boundaries. It doesn't think. And, Carrie is seriously deluded about AI, and is fed further delusions by these people that she has assigned an authority to trust. Unfortunately for her now, I've always, so way back in the day, like years ago, I did an interview with Carrie. I think I've only ever done one, and she muted me. She just could not stand me telling her that her information was wrong and that her people were lying. And look at her response on JC's show yesterday to Jay Widener, saying the guy's lying. The guy's full of shit. He's lying. William Tompkins was an old man and he lied. He's not a whistleblower. You were deluded. You were duped. And you're continually duped by this guy that you call Captain Mark Richards. And he's not a captain. He was never in the military. He wasn't out. He's not in the Secret Space Force. His father was not in the Secret Space Force. And, if she were to continue talking to him, pretty soon his great-grandfather would have been in the Secret Space Force back with, Lincoln. That kind of shit, right? But, we do have alien AI on the planet, but it's stuck in these, in these UFOs that they captured. And nor would you want to, nor could you lift it out and put it on our digital infrastructure. It just is not going to happen. We'll go, sweetie. It's okay. You hang on. We're going to get there. You just hate it when your guys are real. You know, you'd willingly take the pain, but it's not like I can eat for him, you know? Anyway, so I've been dismissive of Carrie whenever she puts out technical information. And a lot of her witnesses, like some of them, George Green and a few of these other guys, were legit in their jobs in NATO and so on. But because of where they worked, you can't be sure that they're not feeding you a bunch of horseshit, that they're not following their Elohim worship cult proxy rules from the Freemasons, right? That kind of thing. So the Freemasons are just Jews, just practicing Jewish rituals that have been cleaned up for the Goy, and that these Jewish rituals all go back to the Elohim and are part and parcel of what the Elohim demand that we do. And you're a fool if you don't see it. I think we're going to all see it here over these next couple of years, and that maybe a few years from now, Judaism won't exist, nor will the Bible be seen as anything other than a deep fake. Right? A big, big, big deep fake. I've seen some of the Bibles in Europe that were discarded in 325 Common Era in the Council of Nicaea when they codified the canons of the Bible, and also later, I mean, they were working on the Torah and the Talmud all the way up into the 1300s. So, you know, they've been changing the book for 1,000 fucking years. Anyway, so I've seen some of these other Bibles, and they're not like, at all like King James, not even like the Geneva Bible in terms of what they present. So, you know, it's a deep fake world out there, and that's all coming unraveled as part of hyper-novelty. And this is gonna fuck everybody up. All the normies, all of the academics. The only people that won't fuck up so much are going to be the woo people and the Elohim worship cult guys at the top. The politicians, they're so placid and controlled, they won't be seen freaking out probably. Because they don't, you know, they're too stupid to freak out. They don't really understand the magnitude of what the fuck is happening. Although we are now getting language out of the mother weffers and the other control structure stuff that does say that these guys really do understand they've lost, that there's no hope now of their great reset. We've crossed that threshold, and they are simply fighting a retreating battle, right? They're just keeping you. They're just fighting and fighting and fighting so that they can keep what resources they've got hidden and hide more, hoping that when all this shakes out, we won't be able to find those resources that they've got hidden. And that's fundamentally their strategy at the moment. Not particularly a good strategy in my opinion, you know, but nonetheless, they're as trapped as anybody else. Now, so there's a bunch of baby boomers, okay, like myself, and I'm right smack in the middle of the baby boom, and we all ended up with a weird fucking kind of a life. This will include Jay Widener, and I'm sure he would agree if you asked him, that our lives are outside of the bounds of normality of our parents in a very, very, very significant way, and that we had experiences that basically, I think, universe gave us these experiences so that we would be effective at this time. So universe creates people, and it creates people for its purpose. Okay, it doesn't care about us that way at a personal level. So no, the current my understanding of the nature of Creator God, the nature of universe, is that, you know, it doesn't know my name, right? And it doesn't matter that it doesn't know my name, that we don't relate that way. That's not an issue. For a lot of people, it is. They want this personal, protective feeling kind of thing, right? I'm like Max Egan, right? I face infinity without flinching, right? And it's like, okay, all right, not an issue. Anyway, though, so our our hyper novelty here is really starting to break out. So the reason you're listening to me is because of that hyper novelty. Otherwise, you wouldn't give a shit unless maybe you were a programmer or you're into some of this weird shit I'm into, right? It just would not be anything that would be attractive to you to think about even listening to, wasting your time with. But, universe made us as we are. It put us all here for this stuff at this time. And we know we've crossed a significant threshold in the maturation of the awakening process. We know this because of all of the infighting, because of everybody bitching and moaning about each other and our stupid foibles in public in the woo movement. I won't say it's really a movement, but the way of rolling through the woo that is all of us guys. Because the woo abides, it's there. We're simply floating through, so to speak, right? Passers-by. Wandering. And we've got a lot of infighting. Carrie bitching at Jay bitching at Carrie, me bitching about Carrie, all of these kinds of things, right? And so if I disagreed with Jay, I would be bitching at him too. Actually, I think his conclusions are brilliant. He's a great filmmaker. He likes making documentaries, but I would love to he has no interest in it, I don't think, but I'd love to get him to do a fiction movie just because of his skill. And I had some good ideas. We don't have the money or the inclination really to push to get it, and we've actually got the money. That's not the problem. It's getting the people and putting it together, and then the decide why, why do it at this point. I don't really need to educate people using films, but it would be a fun kind of a project for me to do. But I think we're going to have to do real life, not fiction anyway. So Jay's one of those guys where I would quite happily man the barricades and fight with him side by side. He's really intelligent, smart, analytical, and so on and so on. And so we're in this place here where all of this shit's coming out, and there's a lot of infighting. It turns out that infighting in movements reaches its peak just as those movements are successful. And psychologically, you can see why. So if we took the Bolshevik Revolution, there were a lot of Bolsheviks that were fighting with each other as they were becoming successful in 1918 and taking over the Russian Duma, their Congress, and taking over the Soviet Union, or taking over the Russian government in order to build the Soviet Union out of it, right? And so at that point, when they're becoming successful, all of these communists and Bolsheviks, all of whom were Jews, all of whom were Elohim worship cultists of the most foul kind, were fighting among themselves. A bunch of them ended up getting gang warfare almost throughout Western Russia at that point in 1918. This was after Lenin had been sent there by the Germans on a special train. So it happens with all the movements. In the American Revolutionary War, we have the same effect, just as the war is becoming very successful and things start shifting, indicating success, but also that success indicates there's a new order emerging. And as the new order emerges, people basically naturally want to stand up for themselves and carve out territory and that sort of thing. I don't care about that. I'm not interested in followers. I'm not trying to sell anything. My lifespan is reasonably short here in terms of, I don't have hundreds of years left or anything like that. And so I don't have any prompts for me to participate in trying to do that within the woo movement. But you'll see people in the woo movement, most of them much younger than myself, that will indeed be trying to establish their credentials and basically lay claim to their victories over these past decades. And that's just a natural part of it. It's also, this infighting is also a really fucking good sign that we're very close to topping, to coming over the top and then spilling out into the next phase of things. and we may actually be actively doing the topping part of things now, especially based on the amount of increase of the infighting and the depth of it, who's fighting about what, and so on. So I'm going to be an iconoclast, atypical, because I'm going to fight people over technical inaccuracies, but not because I want any power, just because it irritates me that they're technically inaccurate. There are times you can be technically inaccurate, like my discussion with the AI was conceptual. I didn't get into the technical language, in which case we would have had to define all of the words and so on, and it's just quite tedious if you don't already have that base of knowledge. I don't want to educate you, right? I don't want to bring you through computing 101 and firmware 101 to get to a point where we could discuss the nuances that you find in analog versus digital threshold computing. Got to deal with road hazards here. One of our state routes is being all chopped up and rebuilt. So, we're at this point. We're going to have these, the infighting. We're going to cross over the threshold by about the first week in April. I just said April 3rd, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the first week in April, we should have most of the Woo people getting in a new stance now, right? We won't be denigrated. We won't be held down by they'll still try and push us down, the mainstream media, the deep state, and so forth, but we're going to get a lot of support from the normies that are going to just be tumbling into all of this. Necessarily, they will have to go to the beginning stages, to the early adopter, to the how do I want to say it, to the transitional people, okay, that are not laying it out too deep. They're not getting into the real serious nitty gritty. They're just getting you down one level, so you see that level. And so JC, he's like from a beginning through to an intermediary, to an intermediate level, in terms of the education that you get out of watching JC's channel. You get all different kinds of information, but he's not going to go down into the deep aspects of technical discussions relative to our science and our woo and that sort of thing. I'm certain he might want to, but his audience wouldn't be able to accept it. They're not going to sit there, for instance, and listen to myself and someone else debate about the impact of the loss of the ether and why that occurred and what aspects of the ether were disguised in the deep fake experiment on the Michelson-Morley experiment in the 1880s. It's just of no interest to these people. They're very much concerned about, and they will be, about space aliens, about UFOs, about all of this sort of shit, right? And so we'll get into that. So I expect this is so we've had the splits happen. The normies have moved away from mainstream media. Mainstream media is now dying and recognizes that, especially at the corporate management level. We see all of the people that are getting laid off at all of the, all of the online rags, the BuzzFeeds and all of the establishment supporting websites, that sort of thing. We see this occurring. It is somewhat mature even. We're starting to see the organizations themselves fall apart. This, in my opinion, is very good, and it is a definitive sign, because this is a sign of irreversibility. They won't be reconstituting these mainstream publications trying to bamboozle the public. They're still going to try and bamboozle the public. They're just going to have to do it in a different way. So that too will also make our lives a little bit more interesting as this shit happens. This is a long one, I understand, guys. I'm going to end up having to shut this off in a little bit here. Concentrate with the traffic. But, so, our shift into hypernovelty is really an appreciation of it, All right, so we're into it now. It's flowing all around us. It's starting to, the whole system is starting to crumble like the cookie held too long in the milk. Little bits and pieces dropping off here, little bits and pieces dropping off there, that sort of thing. And it's now starting to become visible to everybody. So this is the beginning of that big change. By June, I expect that the larger mass of the normies will have had this hyper novelty impact on them, even if it's only to the point where some woman with purple hair wakes up one day and says, well, where's BuzzFeed, or where is this, or that kind of thing, right? Like they're trying to bring back Jon Stewart to run the Daily Show, to try and do here what they thought he was going to do in 2016 relative to Hillary Clinton. And, in terms of propping up the establishment and the leftist viewpoint of things. That's a sign of desperation. It's not going to work. It's going to be a big failure. Everything they're going to do relative to the media is going to fail, because now we're all looking at the media. Now we know a great deal more about how all this shit is done. And we're basically not putting up with the bullshit anymore. So this is a very interesting time relative to that shift in our narrative. Really pretty much covers what I wanted to go through there relative to the AI being locked into the old UFOs. And even if they were to connect the alien AI via a USB cable from the spaceship into the internet, it's like, big fucking deal. It has no sentience, see? It is not conscious. It's not conscious of itself. These things don't read, so gene decode is just full of shit. It doesn't read the internet, ever. There's a lot of other aspects of this that are developing, and we're pushing our way into a new reality here. And by that, it's sort of like we go into the woo and we push the woo around to get the shape of the reality that we want. And that's the process that we're in at this moment. That process can be expected to accelerate rapidly through this spring and through summer, and then by fall it should be moving so fast that it won't be possible for most of the people to stand back and look at that process independent of what's going on, because so much will be going on. It'll all be part of that process, but at that stage you're going to just get captivated by all of the boiling minutia of it all coming out. We're about to have this pivotal moment. So what I think is going to develop is some kind of a standoff between Texas and these other states, and in the beginning of American Revolution 2, where it's us all revolting against the corrupt federal government, the deep state. And so I think we'll have some kind of a standoff that'll go nearly a month, until about February 18th or so. That's just a guess based on the building tension language within the reports. Now, I have not haven't been able to get at data for really to process it for 3 fucking weeks. And my process is different now, because I'm not doing mass web scraping. I'm doing targeted sampling and analysis. And it's much more difficult. If I get a hit on an idea, for instance, off of that, then I have to go and fire up some other routines to validate that that's not a one-off or a misleading kind of a deal. So very tedious now. And I'm only doing it for myself and to get a few hints of what's going on, so that I can sort of put it out there so people would have a little bit of a heads up. But I haven't done it for weeks because of poor Boris. And he's been so ill, and I've got all these other things going on. Anyway, it was just like, fuck it. So between now and the 18th, we'll have the Texas standoff be defined, and then we'll have the resolution. And then thereafter, everything's going to be different, right? So we don't know how a lot of this stuff is going to manifest, because humans have never been here before, or rather, it's been so long that humans have been in this particular situation that we can safely say that it's on the other side of the Kali Yuga. So back on the descending side of the Yugas is when we were last in a situation where we had no authority, we think. We don't know, because none of us have lived back 7,000 and 10,000 years. But that there are indications, right? The way the houses are built and all this kind of stuff. So, and the shape of what's coming. So now I'm of the opinion that, so I don't think that I don't fear AI. You know, I don't buy into Carrie's fear porn, nor Gene Decode, nor any of these other fuckers that are hyping this. You know, be scared, AI is going to come and eat your lunch. Just don't accept it, you know, and probably most programmers don't also. There's a lot to worry about AI, but AI is its own safety, so to speak. So if someone creates now you've got a perfect thing here, by the way. So I could get like busted, and they could come on in, and they could, in a movie fashion, they could show me a picture of myself and, you know, Osama bin Laden or something, having coffee, whatever, you know, trying to make some kind of an association out of nothing. And even if it were factual that I had actually had coffee with Osama bin Laden, right now, these days, I'd say, that's AI. Go fuck yourselves. And, you know, get me into court and let me have software, and I can prove it's AI. Now, that is true of AI photos. They're very easily determined to be AI photos, to be altered. And we have AI that helps us do this. So AI is its own protection, so to speak, right? You use it in that way. And mostly AI is really stupid. That's what I'll be showing when we get into my lawsuit stuff here. You know, hopefully Boris is going to get better soon, and then I'll be able to devote some time, and I'm going to try and set it up. It's difficult because all my AI stuff is on my machine in the inside, which is a Linux box, and I only use this lame-ass Windows server out in the office for, you know, videos and telecommunications, and to help run the security system at the place. But I'll set something up so I can do screen shares. See if I can get my accounts on some of these AIs transferred over to Windows. I don't know that's possible. The Russian one, it's not, because it's a Unix-based system and doesn't want to interact well with HTML and stuff. It runs in a different way. But I can probably do Chat GPT on a Windows box and do screen share and show you how it works that way. Bunch of fucking around, and it's cold out there, so it'll take me a while to get to it. But we'll start laying out the parameters of how to use Chat GPT to do lawsuits. So during this period of hypernovelty, you know, if you have a legitimate grievance, here's a way that you as an individual can, you know, feel comfortable filing a lawsuit against some of these big motherfuckers. I guess that's about it. I'm going to get into traffic here in a little bit. So maybe I'll do another one of these on the way back, many hours from now. I don't know what's going to happen. We have to get advanced radiology, I'm sure, and I've got to talk to these people and that sort of thing. But like I say, I'll figure out a way to do another one of these, hopefully. And hopefully my device will not crap out like it has been recently. Okay, guys, take care. Hypernovelty is on all of the Woo guys now, and if you look around, you can probably see a bunch of it.